What would you do if you woke up one morning and found out your family's land, the same land your great-grandfather built from nothing, suddenly wasn't yours anymore? I didn't think it could happen. Not here. Not to me. But the moment I saw that bright orange violation notice slapped onto my mailbox, I knew something was wrong. Unauthorized vehicle on property. Must be removed within 72 hours. At first, I thought it was a mistake. The vehicle in question? My grandfather's 1978 Winnebago, parked in the same exact spot next to the barn where it had sat for over 3 decades. The RV wasn't just some rusted old junker, it was family. It was the same one Grandpa took me camping in when I was a kid, the same one where my daughter Emma and I had planned to make new memories together this summer. So when I saw a tow truck creeping down my driveway that afternoon, its flashing amber lights reflecting off the windshield, my stomach dropped. They were really going to take it. I slammed my truck into reverse, tires kicking up dust as I sped down our long dirt driveway. Emma, still clutching the camping checklist we had been making in the passenger seat, gasped in panic. "Dad! They can't take Grandpa's RV." But they were sure as hell trying. The tow truck driver, a scrawny guy with a patchy beard, was already securing chains around the RV's front axle when I jumped out of my truck. My boots hit the dirt hard as I ran toward him. "Hey!" I yelled. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" The man barely looked up. "Just doing my job, sir. Orders are to remove this vehicle." "Orders from who?" I demanded, stepping between him and the RV. The driver fished a crumpled paper from his back pocket and handed it over like he'd done this 100 times before. The words Willow Creek Estates Homeowners Association were stamped across the top in bold, official-looking print. And at the bottom, in elegant, looping handwriting, was a signature that made my blood boil. Evelyn Montgomery. The HOA president. I clenched my jaw so tight it hurt. My farm wasn't part of any damn HOA. Never had been. My family had owned this land for almost 100 years. "You've got the wrong property," I snapped. "This is private land. My name's on the deed, and I sure as hell never signed up for any HOA rules." The driver shrugged. "Not my problem. HOA says this is their jurisdiction now. Says here you got 3 warnings already." "Warnings?" My fists curled at my sides. I never received a single notice before this. I yanked out my phone. "I'm calling the sheriff." "Suit yourself," the driver said. "But by the time you sort it out, your RV will be sitting in our impound lot. $200 a day storage fee. Plus a $500 tow charge." Before I could respond, the sound of a car engine purred behind me. A shiny white Mercedes pulled up, its custom Willow Creek Estates plates gleaming in the sun. The driver's door opened, and out stepped Evelyn Montgomery herself. Dressed like she was heading to a country club instead of a dusty farm, she adjusted her sunglasses with perfectly manicured fingers, flashing me the kind of smile that never reached her eyes. "Mr. Walker," she said sweetly, her heels clicking against the gravel as she approached. "It's about time we had a little chat." Evelyn Montgomery took a slow step forward, tilting her head just enough to look over the rim of her sunglasses. Her smile was razor-sharp, the kind that wasn't meant to be friendly but to remind you she was in control. "Mr. Walker," she said, voice smooth as silk, "you've had plenty of time to address our concerns. I see you've finally been forced to take action." I took a steady breath, keeping my voice even. "My farm isn't part of your HOA, and you have no right to tow anything from this property." Evelyn sighed, almost bored, and pulled a sleek leather folder from her purse. "Perhaps you should have read the notices we've left." She opened it with a dramatic flick and pulled out a document with a gold county seal at the top. "Your access road was incorporated into our jurisdiction last year during Phase 2 of our community expansion. The board voted unanimously. I snatched the paper and scanned it. There it was, buried under a mess of legal jargon, a highlighted strip of my driveway, marked as HOA shared access. My gut twisted. Grandpa had let a neighboring farm use our road decades ago, back when folks helped each other out without worrying about paperwork. Had that old agreement somehow given these people a foothold? Emma clutched my sleeve, her voice small. Dad, they can't just take Grandpa's RV, right? I squeezed her shoulder. No, honey. They can't. But the doubt was crawling up my spine. Evelyn smiled as if she could smell it. You have 72 hours to remove the vehicle or it will be impounded per our bylaws. I took a step toward her. This isn't over. She didn't flinch. Oh, Mr. Walker, she said, sliding her sunglasses back onto her face, it never is. She turned on her heel, stepping gracefully into her Mercedes while the tow truck driver, clearly waiting for her signal, started unwinding the chains from my RV. I held my ground, watching them retreat down my driveway like they already owned it. The moment they were gone, I pulled out my phone and called the one person I knew would have answers, *** Maggie Carter, my neighbor across the road, ***. Maggie picked up on the first ring. Tell me they didn't get the RV. Not yet, I muttered. But they tried. She swore under her breath. James, listen to me. Something bigger is happening. They tried the same thing with Sam's tractor last week. Maria Gonzalez's boat was taken this morning. The Patel family got a violation notice for their camper, same deadline as yours. I gripped the phone tighter. They're going after everyone. Maggie's voice dropped lower. And it's not just us. I talked to an old friend from Glendale County. Same story, their HOA pressured a farmer to sell, then suddenly, boom. His barn caught fire before he could fight back. A chill crept up my spine. I knew the story. The fire had been ruled accidental, but no one really believed it. They want this land, I murmured. And they'll do whatever it takes to get it. Maggie was silent for a beat. Then, so what are we going to do about it? I looked down at the county document Evelyn had given me, my jaw tightening. First, we find out exactly how deep this goes. ####. The next morning, I drove straight to the county records office. It was an old brick building with yellowed blinds, and the clerk behind the desk looked like she'd rather be anywhere else. I need to see property records for Walker Farm, I said. She raised an eyebrow but started typing. You looking for something specific? Yeah, I said. A reason why my land is suddenly under HOA control. Her fingers paused over the keyboard. She glanced at me, then at the paper I slid across the counter. Her mouth pressed into a thin line. Give me a minute. She disappeared into the back. A long minute stretched into 5. Then 10. Finally, she returned with a thick folder and set it on the counter between us. There's no official record of any boundary changes. I blinked. Excuse me? She tapped the folder. Your property lines are the same as they've been for the past 75 years. Nothing filed, nothing rezoned, and nothing linking you to Willow Creek Estates. A slow, angry heat rose in my chest. Evelyn had lied. I flipped through the pages. The only thing that stood out was a recent amendment filed 6 months ago, detailing shared road access for emergency services. No homeowner signatures. No actual boundary changes, ****. I looked up. Can I get a copy of this? The clerk hesitated, then nodded. I can't print it here, but, she glanced toward the back room. Wait outside for 5 minutes. I understood immediately. 5 minutes later, I walked out with the evidence I needed. But before I could even start my truck, my phone buzzed. 3 missed calls from Emma's school. My stomach dropped. I called back immediately. Mr. Walker, the secretary answered, relief in her voice. We wanted to inform you. What happened? I cut in, heart pounding. There was a pause. Then, a woman named Evelyn Montgomery came to the front office this afternoon. She claimed there was a family emergency and asked to pick up your daughter. The air left my lungs. She wasn't on the approved list, so we called you, the secretary continued. Your daughter is safe, but we thought you should know. Safe. For now. I gripped the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. Evelyn wasn't just coming for my land. She was coming for my family. I drove faster than I should have, my knuckles white against the steering wheel. My heart hammered in my chest, the echoes of the school secretary's words rattling inside my skull. Evelyn Montgomery had tried to take my daughter. Not the RV. Not my land. Emma. By the time I pulled into my driveway, dust swirling around the tires, Emma was already outside, sitting on the porch with her knees pulled to her chest. She looked up as I got out of the truck, her eyes red. Dad, she sniffed, why did that lady come to my school? I knelt in front of her, gripping her shoulders gently. Because she wants something she can't have, I said, keeping my voice calm even though I felt anything but. And she thinks scaring us is the way to get it. Emma nodded, rubbing at her eyes. She said it's not fair to keep living in a place that other people want more. A sharp, hot anger coiled in my chest. That woman had spoken to my child, planted ideas. Evelyn was done playing games. She wanted me gone, and she wasn't afraid to get personal. Listen to me, I said, tucking a loose strand of hair behind Emma's ear. We are not going anywhere. This is our home. And I promise you, we're going to fight for it. That night, I called Maggie, Sam, and the other neighbors. Within the hour, my kitchen was packed with people just like me, people who'd been living under the constant threat of eviction, fines, and harassment. Sam was still fuming. This is bigger than just our land, he muttered. Evelyn's husband owns Precision Towing, right? Well, guess what? That company has been targeting farms in 3 counties. Stolen tractors, RVs, boats, same playbook, different zip codes. Maria slammed a folder down on the table. And this, she said, flipping it open. A real estate listing for Willow Creek Estates Phase 3. Check the map. Look familiar? I leaned over the papers. My stomach twisted. The planned expansion included our land. Our homes. Our farms. Every single property that Evelyn had targeted. They've been trying to force us out so they can build more of their cookie-cutter houses, Maggie said. They rezone without telling us, slap us with fake violations, and if we can't pay the fines, they take the land. Simple as that. Except, Maria added, none of it's legal. The county has no record of our land being part of their HOA. That paperwork Evelyn keeps waving around? It's fake. I exhaled slowly, gripping the edge of the table. I had suspected corruption, but this? This was an organized land grab. A coordinated attack. Maggie leaned forward. So, what do we do? We fight back, I said, my voice steady. And we start by catching them in the act. The next morning, I parked my truck in front of Precision Towing and walked straight into the office. The guy behind the counter barely looked up from his newspaper. I'm here for my RV, I said flatly. He snorted. That'll be $700. Plus storage fees. I placed both palms on the counter and leaned in. You stole it from my property. And I have a county officer looking into the legal status of your impound lot as we speak. That got his attention. His smirk faltered. Look, pal, I just processed the paperwork. You got a problem? Take it up with management. Gladly, I said, pulling out my phone and snapping a photo of the files stacked behind the desk. I caught the guy's name tag in the shot too, *** Doug Wilkes ***. Doug scowled. "Hey, you can't just..." "Yeah?" I said, tucking my phone back into my pocket. "Then call the cops. I'd love to have this conversation with them." Doug hesitated, then muttered something under his breath before slamming the window shut. I walked out of there without my RV, but I had enough information to prove they were running a racket. That night, Detective Lauren Bishop and Officer Ryan Collins met with us in my barn. They listened as we laid out everything: the land grabs, the fraudulent violations, the impound scams. And when I showed them Evelyn's real estate expansion plans, I saw something flicker behind Bishop's eyes. "We've been watching precision towing for months," she admitted. "But we never had enough to move on them." I nodded. "Then let's give you something you can't ignore." That's when I told them the plan. The next evening, Sam parked his pristine 1965 Ford truck, his most prized possession, ***, right in my front yard, ***. We wanted Evelyn to see it. We wanted her to believe she was winning. Then we waited. Hidden microphones. Night vision cameras. Officers concealed in the barn and the tree line. All of us ready. By midnight, I spotted movement down the road. 2 tow trucks, lights off, creeping toward my driveway. And behind them? Evelyn's white Mercedes. She was here. I whispered into my mic, "They took the bait." From my hiding spot, I watched as the tow truck drivers moved like clockwork, one of them securing chains around the front of Sam's truck. Then Evelyn stepped out of her SUV. She stood with her arms crossed, her expression smug as she watched the cables tighten. I reached for my radio. "Wait for it," Detective Bishop murmured through my earpiece. Then Evelyn spoke. "Make sure it's done quietly," she told the driver. "I don't want another scene like last time. Just hook it and go." Bishop's voice crackled through the radio. "That's it. We've got her." Floodlights exploded to life, cutting through the darkness. "Police! Hands where we can see them!" The tow truck driver yelped and dropped the remote as uniformed officers swarmed the scene. Evelyn spun in place, her face draining of color. As Bishop approached her, badge glinting in the light, Evelyn tried to recover, plastering on that fake smile. "This is a misunderstanding," she began. But Bishop wasn't buying it. "No, Mrs. Montgomery," she said, snapping a pair of handcuffs from her belt. "This is felony property theft and racketeering, and we have every word of it on tape." For the first time since this nightmare began, Evelyn Montgomery looked afraid. Evelyn Montgomery's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. She glanced around wildly, as if expecting someone, anyone, to step in and rescue her. But there was no escape this time. The floodlights burned through the darkness, illuminating every detail of her downfall. The police officers moved swiftly, securing the stunned tow truck drivers while Detective Bishop pulled out a small digital recorder and hit play. Evelyn's voice echoed across the driveway. "Make sure it's done quietly. I don't want another scene like last time. Just hook it and go." She flinched, her face contorting as she realized there was no talking her way out of this. That's taken out of context," she sputtered. "I was simply enforcing the HOA's policies. This is all a misunderstanding." Bishop didn't even blink. "No, Evelyn," she said flatly. "What this is, is a felony, and we have more than enough evidence to charge you with fraud, illegal towing, harassment, and conspiracy to commit real estate fraud." Evelyn shook her head, her manicured nails gripping the lapels of her designer blazer. "This is outrageous. I have powerful connections. Do you have any idea who I am?" Bishop tilted her head, unimpressed. Yeah. You're a criminal, turn around. Evelyn barely had time to gasp before the cold snap of handcuffs clamped around her wrists. No, 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 she shrieked, struggling as officers hauled her toward the squad car. You can't do this. I am the HOA. I let out a slow breath, watching as the woman who had terrorized my family, my neighbors, and countless other farmers was finally dragged away. But the job wasn't done. Not yet. The officers searched Evelyn's SUV and immediately hit pay dirt, *** stacks of forged property violation notices, a ledger filled with financial transactions linked to precision towing, and a folder labeled Phase 3 Acquisition Plan. Detective Bishop flipped through the documents and let out a low whistle. She was really trying to take everything. She handed me a printed map, the same one we had found in our research, but with one sickening addition: handwritten notes listing projected sale prices for our homes and farms, prices far below market value. My stomach churned. She had already been planning how much she could make off our land before we were even forced out. That's when a second wave of squad cars arrived, their red and blue lights slicing through the night. A familiar voice called out from the lead car. Mr. Walker. I turned to see Sheriff Mercer stepping out, his expression grim but approving. I got a call from the county office. You might want to come down to the station. There's something you and your neighbors should see. The next morning, I sat in the county sheriff's office with Maggie, Sam, Maria, and the Patel family, flipping through an evidence file thicker than a phone book. This isn't just about your land, Bishop said, pacing the length of the conference room. We've been digging deeper overnight. Turns out, Evelyn and her husband have been running this exact scam in 3 counties, fraudulently rezoning land, forging signatures, and using fake HOA policies to seize property. Sam frowned. How the hell did they get away with it for so long? Sheriff Mercer set down a thick stack of financial records. Bribes. Payoffs. They had friends in the zoning office, the planning board, and even a few banks willing to look the other way when properties went into foreclosure. Maria leaned forward. So what happens now? Bishop folded her arms. We're issuing arrest warrants for Evelyn's husband, Stanley Montgomery, and several members of the HOA board. The DA's office has already signed off on felony charges, and we're freezing their assets before they can disappear. I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. So, this is really over? Bishop nodded. For them? Yes, but for you? That depends on whether you're willing to take legal action. You and your neighbors have every right to sue for damages. The land grabs, the false fines, the harassment, you could bankrupt what's left of that HOA if you wanted to. I glanced around the room. Maggie met my gaze, her jaw tight. Maria was already nodding. Sam grinned. Damn right we're suing, Sam said. They tried to take everything from us. They don't get to walk away with a slap on the wrist. The decision was unanimous. By that evening, the news had broken. Local HOA president caught in massive fraud scheme. I sat on the couch with Emma, watching as Evelyn's mugshot flashed across the TV screen. Detectives uncovered a web of corruption involving real estate fraud, racketeering, and illegal property seizures, the reporter said. Several homeowners have already filed lawsuits, and multiple county officials are under investigation for their roles in the scandal. Emma turned to me, a hopeful gleam in her eyes. Does this mean we're keeping Grandpa's RV? I smiled, ruffling her hair. Not only that, sweetheart. We're keeping our home. For good. Just then, headlights pulled into the driveway. I stood as a flatbed truck came to a stop, carrying Grandpa's Winnebago. A uniformed officer hopped out, paperwork in hand. Judge ordered an emergency property return, you're free to take it back. I signed without hesitation, my chest tightening as the RV was carefully lowered into place. The old thing looked a little battered, but it was still ours. I turned to Emma. What do you say we take that trip we planned? Her face lit up. Anywhere, Dad. As long as it's far away from nosy neighbors who think they make the rules. I chuckled, pulling her into a hug. We had won. Not just against Evelyn Montgomery, but against a system built to break people like us. Sometimes standing your ground isn't just about protecting an old RV. Sometimes, it's about protecting everything that matters. The days that followed felt like a dream, one where justice wasn't just a vague idea but something you could actually hold in your hands. The HOA board resigned in disgrace, and Evelyn Montgomery, along with her husband and their crooked business partners, were facing a mountain of felony charges. Fraud. Racketeering. Illegal property seizures. Even tampering with county records. The lawsuits were piling up faster than they could post bail, and the once pristine reputation of Willow Creek Estates was in ruins. For the first time in months, my farm was quiet. No more violation notices shoved in my mailbox. No more tow trucks creeping down my driveway. No more fear. And then there was the best part, our RV was back where it belonged. Emma and I spent the entire weekend cleaning it up, scrubbing off the grime from the impound lot, airing out the musty cushions, and laughing at old photos we found stuffed in the glove compartment. Neighbors who had once kept their heads down out of fear were now fighting back together. Sam got his tractor returned, Maria got her boat back, and even the Patel family's camper was found in a storage lot 2 towns over. What we had lost, we took back. But more than that, we had won something bigger, the right to live on our land without someone else making up rules as they went. One evening, as the sun dipped below the fields, I stood in the doorway of the RV, hands on my hips, watching Emma flip through Grandpa's old map. She tapped a spot near Yellowstone, the same trip he had taken me on when I was a kid. Here, she said, grinning up at me. This is where we should go first. I nodded, feeling something settle deep in my chest. Peace. We weren't just keeping the RV. We were finally free to use it. We packed that night, and by morning, we were on the road, the same dirt driveway Evelyn had tried to claim stretching out behind us, untouched, unowned by anyone but us. Because the truth is, no one should be able to take what's yours just because they want it more. Have you ever had to fight back against HOA corruption or an out-of-control Karen? Share your experience below, let's see who had it worse.